Wait, stop. Hang on a sec. So the mountain division is where? They're on the coast, right? And where's the infantry? They're in the mountains. Okay, well, what about the armor? Well, they're in the forest. Did you guys just like roll dice to see who gets to attack where? All right, see ya. August 28th, 1942. Nearly 3 months ago, Isoroku Yamamoto launched the Battle of Midway, hoping for a decisive victory over the American Pacific Fleet. That did not work out as he had planned. But this week Yamamoto tries again. I'm Indy Neidell. This is World War II. Last week, a Japanese attempt to dislodge the Americans from Guadalcanal was massacred, though Japanese High Command cannot believe that possible. An Allied raid on Dieppe, France wasn't exactly massacred, but it failed dismally, though Allied High Command does learn from it at least. And in the Soviet Union, the Axis forces have cleared the Don River of the enemy and will soon attack to reach the suburbs of Stalingrad. And by soon, I mean this week. The night of the 22nd, most of 16th Panzer Division moves to its jumping-off point east of the River Don. This is a bridgehead like 5 kilometers wide and maybe 2 deep. Soviet artillery and bombers try to knock the bridge out to no avail, and at 4:15 a.m. the Panzers blast off, an armored punch aiming right across the bare steppes for the Volga, Stalingrad or bust, with heavy Luftwaffe support. Richthofen's 8th Air Corps hit Stalingrad with a massed blow, smashing in the residential and administrative centers, setting fire to the oil storage tanks so that the destruction was hidden in a dense pall of smoke. On the Volga, the docks burned to their timber shells. Armored vehicles and Panzer Grenadiers gunned down any opposition in their scything path. At 23:10 hours, August 23rd, 79th Panzer Grenadier Regiment radioed from the Volga that they were located in Spartanovka, the northerly suburb of Stalingrad. Stalingrad was passing through its own special crucifixion, the dead lying out in the streets, and German troops standing to on the Volga on the 23rd of August. Joseph Stalin does not get a full report from Chief of Staff Alexander Vasilevsky until the next day, because a lot of communications have been wrecked. Then at 9 p.m. the 24th, High Command big figures Yeremenko, Khrushchev, Chuyanov, Malyshev, and Vasilevsky meet. Stalin has radioed in his hard and fast orders. The enemy has broken our front with insignificant force. You have quite enough men at your disposal to destroy enemy units which have broken through. Assemble the planes of both fronts and throw them in against the enemy. Mobilize an armored train and use it on the circular railway round Stalingrad. Use plenty of smoke screens to confuse the enemy. Jab into the breakthrough units by day and also by night. Use all your artillery and Katyusha resources. The most important thing is not to let panic take hold. Do not be afraid of the enemy thrusts, and keep your faith in our ultimate success. Yeremenko sends his daily report to Stavka at midnight. The German advance has split the front in two. They've cut the railway lines from the city to the north and northwest. Most communications between Moscow and the Caucasus are cut. They've reached the river, and the bombing of the city has impaired all industrial and military activity. He phones Stalin and asks about the possibility of evacuating civilians and industry from the city. Stalin says that would be a decision to surrender the city and forbids any such preparations for evacuation or even industrial sabotage. With those words, which needed no explaining to the company assembled in the basement headquarters, Stalin had committed himself, the Red Army, and the Russians at large to one of the most terrible battles in the whole history of war. The mobile units of 6th Army are unable, however, to break into the city. Hans Valentin Hüge's 16th Panzers are resupplied in their drive as spearhead, but the afternoon of the 26th, they radio to Army Commander Friedrich Paulus, "It is not possible with our present forces to stay on the Volga and hold open the communications to the rear. We will have to pull back tonight." Paulus replies, "Do not retreat." He does not. But the week ends, and he has not made headway, his division taking 500 casualties a day. Yeremenko is counterattacking against the 6th Army corridor from the Don, all this time trying to cut off all the advanced troops from 14th Panzer Corps. On the 26th, Soviet 4th Tank Army's left and 62nd Army's right, attacking as a pincer, managed to squeeze the corridor down to 4 kilometers. But they cannot close off and isolate the German mobile divisions, who are supplied by airdrop. There is also a remarkable Italian cavalry charge here this week as well. But that is covered on our Instagram day-by-day coverage of the war. Check it out. Anton Lopatin's 62nd Army defends the north, northwest, and western approaches to the city. But with the Germans at the Volga to the north and pushing past Sokarevka, some of its units are threatened themselves with encirclement. By the end of the week, 62nd's left wing has been driven into 64th Army's rear. So tomorrow, the 29th, Yeremenko will transfer control of the 62nd to the southeastern front. By now, Hermann Hoth's 4th Panzers, attacking from the southwest, have advanced to southeastern front's intermediate defense line. But from the 26th, they have stopped to regroup in the face of ever-stiffening Soviet defense. That is Army Group B. Army Group A is still mounting its offensive in the Caucasus. Now, Lavrently Beria has been ordered by Stalin to the region. He is the head of the NKVD, the Soviet Interior Ministry and State Security Apparatus. In this area, there are many anti-Soviet and rebel groups who may well side with the invaders. Beria is to set up a parallel NKVD staff beside the army staff and build up a force of NKVD troops. His job is to suppress any incipient revolt. On the 23rd, he orders the creation of a Caucasian Range operational group, which will command the troops guarding the mountain passes. Staffed with his own men, it basically takes control away from Ivan Tulenev and 46th Army. As for the invaders, Ewald von Kleist wants to reach Grozny, but only has a couple divisions from 40th Panzer Corps in position to try and do so, and they are very short on fuel. He also has had to divert combat units to his communications and supply lines, since the Soviet units he bypassed thrusting forward are now attacking them. By now, the Romanian 2nd Mountain Division is protecting the flanks at the Baksan River, so on the 23rd, 40th Corps resumes its advance to try and cross the Terek River. They reach Mozdok by the afternoon and manage to take it by the end of the 25th. Prokhladny falls the 26th, and by then elements of 40th Corps have reached the Terek at several places. But Soviet resistance is stronger and stronger, and without more gas and more infantry, a river crossing is going to be really tricky. Eugen Ott's infantry has been assigned to help Kleist, but it will still be days before it arrives. While this is going on, the Axis focus is on clearing the Kuban and the Taman Peninsula. The Romanians have been clearing the coastline, taking Temriuk the 23rd, and Wilhelm Wetzel's infantry has crossed the Kuban River and after days of fighting, taken Krimskaya. By the 22nd, they've torn a hole in the defense perimeter of Novorossiysk. But as casualties mount, Wetzel halts for now the 25th, since it is obvious that the city is going to be tough to take, and since Luftflotte 4 was diverted to Stalingrad last week, he's going to bring up more assault guns and more artillery. In North Africa, though, the Axis forces are back to full strength. Erwin Rommel also now has the 164th Light Division in from Crete and another Italian division. He has, in fact, 2 German and 5 Italian infantry divisions total. The Panzer Armee has 229 tanks, more than 70 of them Mark IIIs, which can outrun all the Allied tanks except the Grants, and 27 Mark IV Specials with 75mm guns with armor-piercing ammo. The Italian armor has 243 medium tanks and 38 light ones. On paper, at least, the Allies have the big armor advantage, with over 800 tanks, though under 700 are operational. 164 are the Grants, the rest are cruisers or Stuarts. In the skies, Rommel has also been reinforced, and his 700 planes outnumber the Desert Air Force, though each side can call on like 200 reinforcements from outside their command. Ultra intercepts say that Rommel is to attack now on the 26th, the night of the full moon, but he is delayed by transport issues. Richard Doherty points out that he does have a better fuel situation now than he's had on earlier occasions. He has enough for a week-long battle. He will attack the night of the 30th to still take advantage of the moon. His plan is simple and direct. While his infantry holds his left and makes raids to fool the British that an attack is coming in the north, his mobile force will secretly assemble and advance 50 kilometers at night before heading north behind the main enemy positions. Thing is, Allied commander Bernard Montgomery knows Rommel cannot mount a frontal assault against the British right. He just doesn't have the force. And as long as 8th Army holds Alam Haifa, Rommel cannot achieve decisive success. So he plans to hold the ridge and wait for Rommel to launch a right hook, which is what Rommel is in fact going to do. And knocking 8th Army off that ridge will be a major undertaking. In the South Pacific, Japanese command has by now realized that it will be a major undertaking to get their enemy off of Guadalcanal or destroy the airbase there. They are by now making nightly supply runs, using destroyers as supply ships to bring in fresh troops. The Americans are actually doing the same thing to bring in gas and ammunition. And on the 22nd, 2 such supply trains collide at the southern end of the slot, the waters off the north coast of Guadalcanal, with the American destroyer Blue being damaged so badly by Japanese destroyer Kawakaze, she must soon be scuttled. But beyond that, Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto himself, the head honcho of the whole combined fleet, although I'm pretty sure the Japanese rarely use the word honcho, has come down to Truk with much of the fleet. SyncPac intelligence tells the Allies already the 21st that a large attack force is either already in the southern waters or is heading that way. And Chester Nimitz tells Robert Gormley, commanding the South Pacific Naval Force, to bring the whole force to positions off the Solomons. And Jack Fletcher is to bring his 3-carrier task force north in support. The Japanese combined fleet has about a 2-to-1 advantage over them in total ships. But that fleet is going through some changes. As recently as the June clash, Japan's 12 battleships occupied the hub of fleet organization and plans. Now 8 of them remained behind, and the other 4 played a clearly subordinate role, thus finally resolving the contradictions since the start of the war between the theoretical and actual relationships of the Imperial Navy's carriers and battleships. Chuichi Nagumo, leading the main force, has the 2 heavy carriers, Shokaku and Zuikaku, and the light carrier, Ryujo. He also has some 170 planes, which is like 80 fewer than Fletcher has total. Yamamoto does have in mind the decisive naval engagement he's badly wanted, but the fleet is actually there, providing air cover for a transport convoy of Imperial Marines, though defeating carriers is job number 1 to Admirals Nagumo and Kondo. Well, there is a pretty major naval engagement this week. Once again, it does not do what Yamamoto wants it to do. Like his earlier Midway plan, the new operation suffered from the same weakness of dividing the combined fleet to achieve too many simultaneous objectives, plagued by the same lack of communications and intelligence during the early phase of the action. American recon spots the Japanese transport convoy east of Bougainville Island. Fletcher orders an airstrike from carrier Saratoga, but neither it nor land-based planes from Henderson Field on Guadalcanal find the convoy because it changes course to the north. The evening of the 23rd, Fletcher hears from SyncPac, though it's not true, that the enemy carriers are still at Truk. So he sends carrier Wasp and its ships south to refuel, taking its planes with it. Nagumo now has the local plane advantage. The next morning, the Catalina recon plane radios in what it thinks is a Japanese carrier and cruiser sighted 420 kilometers to the task force's northwest. Fletcher is cautious and just after 11 a.m. launches 23 Avenger torpedo bombers as a search and scout mission, but that's it. Then Ryujo sends its strike force to join in the day's Japanese raid on Guadalcanal, along with planes from Rabaul. This has the effect of luring those Avengers away, following the planes rather than the carrier. But there are a lot of radio issues for both sides, with heavy static which produces a great deal of chaos and error. A couple hours later, though, at 1:45, Fletcher launches a strike at the now positively identified light carrier, 30 dive bombers and 8 torpedo bombers from carrier Saratoga. But just after they've left, those Avengers radio in 2 large carriers as the advance force for a bunch of battleships. And this is only 300 kilometers to Fletcher's north. So he may well be hit with too few fighters left to cover himself, 54 Wildcats, and also realizes that sending his remaining 14 dive bombers and 12 torpedo bombers against the full enemy fleet would likely be suicide for them. Radio problems, though, prevent him from recalling the strike he just sent, so he has to just sit there and wait and hope. However, that first scout force then finds Ryujo refueling the fighters from the Guadalcanal raid. Ryujo sends up 5 Zeros as its combat patrol, but the Avengers miss the agile light carrier with their torpedoes anyhow. But you know who doesn't? The 38 planes that suddenly arrive from Saratoga. 3 bombs and a torpedo fatally cripple Ryujo, setting her on fire and spinning in circles. She will sink 4 hours later. Well, Admiral Nagumo hears the news of Ryujo and thinks, aha, it's at least drawn off enemy attacks on his big carriers. See, at 2:55, his force sends 27 dive bombers with 10 Zeros escort to attack the 2 American carriers he's been shadowing all afternoon. And since no one has turned up to attack the big boys, at 4 p.m., he sends out his reserves as wave number 2. Fletcher has sent up the Wildcats to protect carriers Enterprise and Saratoga, but the Japanese use heavy cloud cover to avoid them. Enterprise has got battleship North Carolina, 2 cruisers, and 6 destroyers as escort. And that force gets the entire Japanese attack. The Zeros manage to draw away the Wildcats while the dive bombers group together in the clouds and then come screaming down on Enterprise, scoring 3 hits. North Carolina is also hit 3 times, but they quickly douse the fires there. But Enterprise is making a lot of smoke. So the Japanese fly off thinking that they've done her in, although at the cost of nearly 24 planes. However, they sort of nearly do. See, Enterprise is fixed pretty quickly, and at 5:45 is ready to recover her planes. But the carrier loses steering at 6:21 p.m. when the motor used to guide the rudder shorts out when water floods a vent accidentally opened by remote. All the smoke knocks out the crew sent in to fix the rudder machinery, so suddenly Enterprise is uncontrollable. And as engineers struggle to get some maneuverability, the radar plotters are watching Nagumo's second wave get closer and closer and closer. Those planes that could have done much to avenge his defeat at Midway change course too soon and fly 80 kilometers too far west, failing to find their helpless target. After 38 nail-biting minutes, Enterprise is once again under control and heading south. Kondo later heads south with cruisers and battleships by night to see what he can find, but at midnight turns back. Raizo Tanaka gets word that 2 American carriers are set ablaze, so he orders his transports to carry on to Guadalcanal. This turns out to be a terrible idea because they are hit hard by dive bombers and even a lucky B-17 hit the morning of the 25th, and the landings are canceled. That morning, Yamamoto calls off the whole operation, and the combined fleet heads back to Truk minus 1 light carrier and a couple of transports. The Japanese have lost 75 or so planes. That's 3 times the American number. But more importantly, just like at Midway, they have lost a lot of trained carrier aviators. That is not the only action in the region this week. On the 25th, the Battle of Milne Bay begins. 2 Japanese cruisers and 5 destroyers are escorting transports towards Rabi Island. This is at the northern tip of Milne Bay. See, Harukichi Hyakutake and his 17th Army are trying to take New Guinea from 2 points, Port Moresby from over the mountains and pushing the Allies off at Milne Bay. This would be a big deal since both Australian and American air forces used the airfields there as a staging ground to bomb Rabaul. So Douglas MacArthur rushes in the 18th Australian Infantry Brigade backed by 1,300 American troops. Those Japanese ships are attacked by air, but still land 1,200 Imperial Marines that evening. Bad weather helps the Japanese, and the Allies cannot stop a bunch of light tanks and 800 or so more troops from soon landing as well. But this might not be such a good thing for them since they are hugely outnumbered here, having underestimated Allied strength. The Japanese attack already the 26th, but are repulsed by the Australians. The Japanese base is attacked too, and they don't have any air cover, so they lose a lot of supplies and the landing barges they were planning on using to outflank the enemy. Well, over the rest of the week and the beginning of next week, the Japanese launch ever more suicidal attacks and are eventually driven back to the beaches. As for the attack over the mountains, the Japanese have been slowly but steadily advancing up the Kokoda Trail against very determined Australian defenses. From the 27th, the attacks increase, making little headway on the Abuwari track, but moving to hand-to-hand combat range on the Isarava track as the week ends. And what a week! With some Axis units reaching the Volga, even as the Soviets try to cut their lifeline, Rommel about to attack in North Africa. Oh, and on the 22nd, Brazil declares war on the Axis powers. Brazilians are furious about U-boats sinking their merchant ships. U-507 sinks 5 Brazilian ships off Bahia on just the 16th and 17th alone. And there was a naval engagement in the Eastern Solomons that cost Japan another carrier. Okay, light carrier, but still, that is 6 carriers sunk since early May. They started the war with 10 of them total. It takes a lot of time to build a new carrier, and though it takes less time to convert another ship like a liner to a carrier, it still takes time, and it's still not then a dedicated constructed carrier, usually just an escort carrier, which are smaller, slower, and carry fewer planes than regular carriers. If this indeed is the age of the carrier, and the US has more, and can produce way more quickly, then time is something Japan absolutely does not have. I wonder how much of their high command is aware of that. Oh, wait. Navy command hasn't told anyone else that they lost all those big carriers, and they've lied about how many enemy carriers they've sunk. So I guess the answer is the Navy brass knows, the Emperor sort of, and no one else. That is a perfect scenario for the words rude awakening. We've released some new limited edition collectibles this summer over at the Time Goes Barracks, and you should check them out. They are really cool. There is a link below. And if you've only joined us in 1942, then you may have missed our 5-hour minute-by-minute coverage of another attack featuring carrier-based aircraft, Pearl Harbor. You do not want to miss that miniseries. Click right here for that. Our Time Ghost Army member of the week is Jeff Patterson. Thanks to the Army, we can produce all of our stuff, like these regular episodes and special series like Pearl Harbor. So join the Army at timeghost.tv or patreon.com. Do not forget to subscribe. See you next time.